welcome to Cine-Excess 2023, Raising Hell, Demons, Darkness and the Abject. So that was our opening night film. I hope you enjoyed it. It's the devil's work. And I'm now going to hand over to Xavier Mendick from Cine-Excess to introduce the speakers today.
Thanks, Natasha, and once again, a very warm welcome to Cine-Excess 2023. We're really excited to have had The Devil's Work as our opening night film, and we're also really honoured and proud to present director Ursula Dabrowsky, and interviewing Ursula is our keynote speaker for Cine-Excess 2023, Professor Barbara Creed. Welcome to both of you, and over to Barbara to conduct the interview.
Thanks very much, Xavier. Well, I haven't met Ursula before, but congratulations on the film. I think the best way I can describe it, it was quite chilling all the way through, I thought. Anyway, it was great. And I'm very, impressed. And I see you've won quite a few awards with the other two films in the trilogy as well. So maybe you could talk a little bit to begin with about how the Devil's Project evolved, how it evolved, the Devil's Work as a project. That would be interesting.
Well, when this is the third film in the trilogy, so the trilogy is completed. But when I started Family Demons, it was a self-finance venture. And I immediately went into a film lab program that the South Australian Film Corporation had created to make my second feature film. It was a film lab that was there to encourage first-time directors. I'd already made a feature, but they liked my screenplay, and I got into the program. And that film received full financing from the South Australian Film Corporation. So when I finished that film, I started writing a new one, which was called Ruby Ruby. And that one, I was looking more towards getting traditional financing, which involves international sales agents, national distributors, going to markets, getting pre-sales, getting a name actor. It was taking a lot longer to make. And so 2 years ago, I was having a conversation with my lead actor of Family Demons, Cassandra Cain, and I was just saying to her I was itching to get back on set, and would she be interested in, I don't know, I was just thinking about making something else that was self-financed, and would she be interested to be involved again, because Family Demons was, she was in that film and that was self-financed, and she said, yes, of course, I would love to. So that's how it started. So I basically started writing the screenplay, and I got my cast and crew, got the location. I also decided to do a crowdfunding campaign just to raise some money for my cast and crew. I wanted to pay them, but I could only afford the 4 nights. So that's why it was shot in 4 nights. And that's why it was also shot with the long takes. And so basically after we shot it, I went into 18 months of post and finished it in early June this year. So that's pretty much how that happened. Yeah.
Fantastic. So it's firing on all fours. The Devil's Work focuses on a family of 3 women, the mother, whom we don't see a great deal of until the end, and her 2 daughters. And I think they're all possessed. And also the partner of the older daughter, in his own ways, has his own possessions. He's possessed perhaps with the younger sister. It certainly seems to be a strong undercurrent anyway, even though he denies this. So can you talk a little bit about the inner demons? I mean, they're possessed with their dreams, their anxieties, their hatreds, their fears, by what you could generally call inner demons, I think. Can you talk a little bit about how you see the inner demon of the characters in the film, and what attracts you to this concept?
I love how it's a personal thing watching movies, what people take from it. But my intention with the and this has actually just happened recently, because I wrote these films and it's been a journey, and they do all link up. They have similar themes. But yeah, what you took out of it, Barbara, was interesting to me, because what my intention is with the trilogy and with The Devil's Work is it's kind of like an extended metaphor, whereby the main character, the protagonist, is trapped, like stuck in a controlling, abusive relationship with a toxic family member. So every single film that I've made in the trilogy has that about it. So if you were to look at Family Demons, I've got a teenager who's in, an abusive relationship with her alcoholic mother. Inner Demon was about two sisters again, so it's family, where you've got the eldest sister making a promise to the younger, and that promise is broken, and the consequences of that. But really, I've just recently looked at Inner Demon and thought, I've got a serial killer couple in Inner Demon, Carl and Denise, and I could say that Carl represents a narcissistic, abusive father figure, and Denise is she's useless in terms of, like, she knows what's going on, doesn't absolutely nothing about it. She's ensnared in this codependent relationship with Carl. So I just thought, yeah, like recently, that is like another family sort of representation in a weird way. And now with The Devil's Work, I've got two sisters that have both been raised by an unloving mother, and the consequences of that are that one's coped with that kind of upbringing, the other hasn't, and they've turned against one another. So the trilogy has essentially, that's been the things that I've been exploring with the trilogy, is pretty much a main character trapped in this dysfunctional relationship. And my goal for my main characters is to get out, is to survive. So it's very horror-ish. And so that's essentially what I want for my main character. And each of those heroines have had differing degrees of success. But my last film, The Devil's Work, has probably the most hopeful ending. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I saw the two sisters both of them trapped in relation to their fears and fantasies about each other. But so the film, it draws on a number of recurring motifs of the horror film, particularly the monstrous mother, the sibling rivalries and jealousies, the haunted house, if you like. These are very old motifs of the horror film, and probably go right back to its beginning, yet still have huge appeal to audiences and to you. So I was wondering what thoughts you might have on that. Why the enduring appeal of motifs like the double and the haunted house and the monstrous mother? Are these a generational thing we all grow up with, that's run right through the last century of Hollywood horror and horror in general, really?
Yeah, maybe. The appeal for me with having chosen horror to tell my stories is that I'm actually not exploiting mental health. It's actually coming from a place, a very personal place, of having been brought up in a narcissistic family structure myself. So these films have been records of my experience with that. I actually create scenes and events from that experience. And so when I decided to make movies, like my first one, Family Demons, I felt that the horror genre would be more palatable, would be more marketable in terms of telling these kinds of stories. And I do watch the kind of horror films that I do prefer are the ones that do deal with things like family trauma and child abuse. Like recently, there's Hereditary. My favorite top film is Martyrs by Pascal Laugier, which was the first half of it, I didn't even know what I was getting into, but it's nothing, I haven't actually experienced anything since. That was just so riveting. And just that the revenge that this girl took on her captors was, I don't know, very cathartic for me. So that's probably the reason that I find the horror genre appealing, but certain types of horror, not all horror. And also in terms of my own work, that's the reason I chose it as well, because I found it very cathartic to write about some of the things I've experienced. And the horror genre was the best way I felt to tell those kinds of stories.
I couldn't agree more. And I think there's something interesting happening in horror, whereby I think horror today, there's so much about the horror of the everyday, that this is changing the borders and boundaries of the genre. I think that's a slightly different topic. I was particularly interested, and I really loved the way you used the long take. I don't know if it's used a great deal in horror. Of course, Hitchcock used it in Rope, where all his takes were the length, I think, of the film can. But you said you're interested in using the long take because it gives an illusion that the film's being, or the events are taking place in real time. And I agree with that, because it also gives the film a sort of forward momentum. You feel the narrative is kind of got you by the scruff of the neck, and you can't escape. And the long take really enhances that. Can you talk a little bit about working with the long take? I mean, does it require a particular sort of scripting, and how do the actors feel about working in long takes? Because it must demand a different kind of performance or concentration from them.
Well, first of all, the reason I went for long takes is because I saw a film in around 2010, 2011, that was actually a Uruguayan horror film called La Casa Muda, which is translated into The Silent House. They did a remake in Hollywood, which I don't feel is as good. But anyway, I first saw that. I loved it, and I loved the long takes in it. And then I found out that they shot it in 4 nights or 4 days, and made it to appear seamless. So it's been done before. Then I watched another feature film called Victoria, which is more of a drama thriller by a German director called Sebastian Schippen. And again, that one was actually shot all in one long take with no cuts, no tricks at all. It was just all one long take. And he did it I think he did it about 4 or 5 times, and it's extraordinary. So for me personally, as a filmmaker who's made films with very low budgets, and I was really intrigued by this kind of filmmaking, this methodology. And I wanted to try it out for myself. And so, yeah, that's pretty much one of the reasons I did it this way I was challenged by it, and I loved the movies that I'd seen that used this methodology. So I wanted to try it myself. In terms of the actors, we didn't improvise or anything like that. The script was written. There was no room really for mistakes or anything. So they pretty much went by the screenplay. And it's like a play. It's very theatrical. So like actors remember their lines. They need to, we blocked everything. They knew where they were going. The camera work, Max Corkindale, who shot the film, was just following them. And so all of that was planned. So what else have I got? Sorry, I got my notes. Sorry, I'm cheating. I think that's pretty much it, just in terms of like, the other thing I wanted to say, sorry, so start again. I would like to use this again. I would like to work in this way again in terms of the long takes, because I do feel it is like you are like this fly on the wall, and I find that you're really in the character's experience. So yeah, I would do that. I'd do it again.
It reminds me, I just was reminded of Chantal Ackerman's Jean Dielman, which won the top film with the Sight and Sound poll, which was just amazing, I thought. And the long takes in that. I mean, when you think about that film, it is a kind of horror film, really. It's very much about the horror of the everyday, particularly by the ending, when she knifes the man she's having sex with to death. Anyway, that's a bit of a sidetrack, I suppose. The long take also, I think, gives an agency to the camera. So as I was watching it, I felt that the camera was taking me, i.e. you, on this journey, and I would always have to be looking at what the camera wanted me to look at until the end. So by the end, when we have that incredibly powerful scene of the mother ghost suddenly appearing, and she does form the trilogy. I mean, they look alike. She and her two daughters, they're similarly dressed. They have the same kind of eerie presence, I think, in the frame. And suddenly she's there, and her younger daughter sees her, and the blood pours out of the mother's mouth, not as if she's wounded inside, but as looked to me as if she was about to eat her daughter, a sort of suggestion of cannibalism even. And then we have the daughter's piercing scream. That sort of was the end of the long take. And it kind of ended up being a comment, I thought, on the horror narrative per se, that we always end up with the monster in one form or another in the final shot. But here, it's so powerful. It's really inescapable. And I think it worked so well because it comes at the end of the long takes, this sort of violent, throbbing scene right at the end. So I was intrigued as to why you ended the film this way, and not with focus on the elder daughter, on Charlie, who is in a way the main protagonist. Suddenly it becomes the struggle to the death, the mother and the younger daughter.
Yeah, there's shifting POVs in The Devil's Work. I started with Charlie's character, and then we move and we see a bit of Dustin's experience with Lindy, and then we move to Lindy's experience. And then, yes, you're right. At the end, I am playing with the POVs in this film for sure. Mm-hmm. It's not a traditional structure, but Charlie. This is why I was saying that this film's hopeful, because Charlie gets away. She doesn't go back to help her sister. It's just, for me, symbolic of Charlie letting go of the narrative that we need to be there for our family no matter what. I don't agree with that. And that's why Charlie leaves and leaves her behind. And she's left behind with the toxic, narcissistic mother figure who's obviously dead and is still haunting Lindy. And that's why she's there at the end. And because if you think about my intention of wanting to, showing this extended metaphor of like my main characters are trapped with their toxic family member, at the very end, Lindy is stuck in hell with her mother, the toxic, witch. And the blood coming out of her mouth is black. So that's like just symbolizes toxicity. And what Lindy was worried about, she's here and she wants my soul and she doesn't want to let me go. That's what happens at the end. Mother possesses her, and that's Lindy's fate, her destiny. She's always going to be, haunted by her terrible relationship with her mother. She hasn't coped. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what I was trying to do with that ending. So despite killing her mother, her spirit will always be haunting her, a part of her. Just like Family Demons, my character there kills her mother, and that spirit won't let her go either. So despite killing the parent, if you haven't coped with all your demons with them, they will stay with you despite them not physically alive.
I was left with the feeling, however, though, that Beth would continue to haunt Charlie, even though Charlie feels she's escaped, because that very opening scene, it's almost as if Charlie's looking into the darkness for her younger sister, almost brings her into being in a way. It's very interesting at the moment. So many women are now directing horror. Over the last, in this new 21st century, they're choosing horror. And I was fascinated to see that Julia Ducournau, with her film Titane, won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is a huge achievement. And she says that she thinks women directors explore violence in the horror film differently from men. I mean, we shouldn't generalize too baldly, but she thinks men are more interested in the violent threat from outside and dealing with it, whereas women are more interested in exploring the violence within. And I thought that was a very interesting comment of hers. And I just wondered what you thought about that in relation to your film, because there is certainly violence on the outside, but for me in the film, the violence is much, much more internal.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that, with what Julie Ducournau has said about that. And it does definitely reflect in the Devil's work in terms of the internal struggle that, that Charlie's going through, but particularly Lindy, who she's, both sisters have internalized the brunt of the trauma like that they've endured from their, their upbringing. And again, like I said before, I think that this film is very much about the female experience of, learning to cope with that. And like I said before, I think Charlie has done the work. She's and states in the movie that's why I'm kind of off the hook a little bit in terms of pointing the finger at, crazy Lindy and all that. Lindy has not done the work. She blames other people for, she doesn't take any sort of responsibility for behavior. She'd rather blame other people. And so for me, it's basically that struggle is ongoing. If you're not able to apologize to someone if you've upset them, or, you need to take responsibility and look at yourself and look at what it is that is causing, so much conflict with other people. So the fact that she doesn't do that, yeah. So I agree with that. I did look at that in this film for sure. It's a lot more internal. But having said that, Lindy does have a hammer, and she does sort of, and she's not afraid to use it. So anyway.
Could you finally just talk a little bit about your the reception of the film at festivals and your future plans?
Sure. I just got back from Sydney, where I was there for the opening night of that festival, and I was there for the whole 4 nights. So I'm still recovering a little bit from that. So that was a lot of fun, and I won an award for Best Australian Director, which always makes me kind of laugh a bit about being Australian. I will never be Australian, Barbara, no matter how long I live in this country with this accent. I don't think I will ever, but still very happy to receive it. And so I'm thrilled about being in Cine-Excess. So that's been wonderful to be part of this and to be able to talk about my movies, because I usually most people want to talk about how did you make it, how it's all about how did you make your movie, and more about the methodology than what it's actually about, because a lot of people have different opinions, and so in terms of what they thought when they watched it. So that's really interesting, but I've been really enjoying this conversation and these questions. Yes. So it's great. But and now I've got there's going to be an announcement tomorrow. Well, it'll be an announcement by the time this is being aired, but I'll be screening the film as part of Monsterfest, which is a Melbourne film festival. And I've already sold the film. I'm going back to the distributor I used for Inner Demon because he's honest. He sends me quarterly reports. So if anyone is listening to this and wants to look for a distributor, I'm going back to Terror Films, which is an LA-based distribution company that are doing the right thing by independent filmmakers like me. And I'm going back because the residuals that I received from Inner Demon went towards the Devil's work. And I would love to, who knows, hopefully we'll get Ruby up. We're close. But if not, then I'll just make another low budget. And who knows, I may or may not make a horror film. I don't know yet. We'll see. I think I'm horrored out, but not quite.
Low budget films are always the most interesting, I think.
Same. I think so too. Yeah. You have freedom. You have the freedom.
Exactly. And you're forced to improvise in ways you mightn't have thought about before as well. Oh, well, congratulations once again. I'm sure it'll be a great hit.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful. That was excellent. So I just want to say thank you to our guests today, and also thank you to all the audiences for joining us. Come and chat to us on social media, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Cine-Excess 2023. Thank you.